I have to make sure that I'm watching the clock and I know, I need to get home. I need to get, if we're at the beach or if we're walking around town or whatever, like you have to go and you have to change and you have to
Mm.
look presentable and then you got to set up your whole, so even though you would think like I have, between 8 or 9 in the morning when I wake up and 5 p.m. I have all day to myself. It's like you do, but you also don't.
Hi, I'm Kim Tolson and I'm the traveling therapist. It's my passion to teach therapists how to navigate online private practices and multiple income streams so they can travel the world. I'm a digital nomad with a virtual insurance based private therapy practice and a multi six-figure coaching business. I'm obsessed with entrepreneurship and developing tools that can help therapists live an adventurous lifestyle. In this podcast, I will discuss my journey as a digital nomad. I'll chat with other traveling therapists and help you navigate the complexities of running an online insurance-based practice. I'm so glad to have you with me on this journey. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Traveling Therapist Podcast. Really excited today to have Allyson Clemmons here with us. She's a pretty interesting story. Allyson, I would love if you would tell everybody how you went from just being a traditional therapist to a traveling therapist, and then we can get into your story and what you're doing right now as a therapist.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I left the US in the fall of 2022 and moved to Greece. And the reason for that was I had a couple reasons. One, I fell in love.
Aw,
And
I love
my
that.
yeah, my partner is European, and honestly, I'd always wanted to leave the US. I was always interested in living overseas. I prioritized travel, whenever I could. It was something that I kind of had always wanted to do, and so the two kind of, the two circumstances kind of met, and so I had to finish a student loan repayment contract in the US. And so as soon as I did that, I was like, see
Mount.
ya. I'm out. Yep, yep. So I moved to
Oh,
Greece.
that's great.
And then I stayed there for about 9 months and then decided it was probably a better place to visit than to live. And so I went north to my partner and I both moved to Albania, which is the country directly
Oh,
north of Greece. And it's next to Italy over the water.
oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. We're thinking about a European sort of tour, and that's definitely on my list.
Yeah. The Balkans
Um,
are interesting. It's an interesting place.
yeah. Yeah. How long have you been there now?
Almost a year, like
Okay.
right about a
Okay.
year in
Gotcha.
Albania. Yeah.
Now, is your partner European? And
He is.
okay, gotcha. So, I always love to ask, like, how are you making like the visas work and these different places, being an American? Maybe you could talk about that a little bit. It sounds like you have a partner, so maybe that
Sure.
changes things. I don't even know.
Yeah. So when I was in Greece, I qualified for the digital nomad visa that the
Nice.
Greek government offers. That tends to be the easiest one. Albania has sort of a unique offer for Americans. You can come here for a year visa free.
Oh,
So you're
wow.
basically, there's no paperwork required. You just come with a valid passport and you're in, and they don't question
Wow.
you. And yeah, I didn't have to show my income or anything like that. So I think there was something that happened. My Albanian history is not great, but I think in the 90s there was something that happened and that the US government helped Albania out in some way. And so they made this agreement that Americans can come over and not need a visa.
hmm Wow, so interesting. So with the visa in Greece, like how did that work? Was that a little more complicated? Did you have to show income and all that stuff? Because I know in Portugal it's pretty complicated if you want to like actually
Hmm.
move eventually. But I'm just curious for people listening that might be like, that'd be cool, go to Greece for a while and have a digital nomad visa.
Yeah, so it actually wasn't that bad. It did take some time. I would say it took
Okay.
about I worked with an immigration law firm in Athens.
Oh, nice.
Although I was living on Crete. So I communicated with them via email and then just sent all of my paperwork just through email or fax. And it took about 4 months. And looking back, like, I don't know what took that long. I
Yeah.
think the Greeks move kind of slow. So,
Yeah.
they're just it's a different culture than the US. So I think working with the law firm was helpful in some ways, but there were some things like, for example, I needed health insurance and I couldn't figure out by myself how to get health insurance that would qualify for the visa. I just
Mm-hmm.
couldn't. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the details exactly, but it's like you needed a specific like euro amount of what it would cover you for. And I just,
Oh,
everything's in Greek, right? So you can't read it.
yeah.
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 And then trying to figure out like, is this what they're talking about? Because the insurance terminology is all different there than it is in the US. And
Right.
so I think having the law firm for that specifically was useful. I'm not sure that otherwise that I would use a law firm again. I might just do it all myself
Mm-hmm.
because really it's just like your bank statements, your passport pages. I had to have a lease agreement, showing that I was,
Mm.
going to live there for however many months. And then I think I needed to show yeah, the health insurance, and that might have been it. It really
Oh,
wasn't.
okay.
Yeah, it wasn't super complicated besides the health insurance. And then, like I said, it just took a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess looking back, it's like, yeah, I probably could have done that myself, but it probably was pretty intimidating at the time, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened? You just like decided to go to Greece and you were like, "Oh, I kind of like it here. I'll apply for the visa." Or were you already like, did you already have that plan in mind, like when you got there? Yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh,
the
okay.
plan was already Greece. So my partner is Ukrainian.
Okay.
And so obviously, like, Ukraine was off the table for obvious reasons. And so we thought, like, let's pick a third country. And so I had looked up, for him, it's so easy because he basically gets asylum in any European country that he wants at the
Oh, I
time.
see. Yeah.
But for me,
Okay.
I don't get asylum. So
Yeah. You're
so
like,
I
but
would
I'm
have
with
to qualify.
him.
Yeah, yeah, right. So, yeah, so Greece had, a pretty straightforward process. There were a couple of other countries that I didn't like. For example, Croatia's visa was only valid for like, I think it was a year. And so
Mm,
you had it for 6 months and then you could renew it for another six. But
mm.
I didn't know how long we were going to stay. And I thought, like,
Yeah.
well, I want the option at least of staying longer than a year because moving countries every year, although that's actually what we ended up doing at the
Yeah.
time, that felt like a lot, pretty
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Move all your belongings, deal with visas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Figure out a whole new country. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So you decided to leave Greece and now you're in Albania. How long have you been in Albania?
So I've been here for just about a year. And then in Greece, I think honestly, we were only there for about 9 months.
Oh,
It was pretty
okay.
short. And I have a theory. I will never know if this is right or not, but I think if we had been living in Athens, it might have been easier for us to stay in Greece, but we were on Crete. And so
Oh,
unfortunately, when the like May or June rolls around, all of the housing disappears because they all Airbnb their properties for the
yeah.
summer.
Yeah.
And so you get
Interesting.
your lease ends, you get kicked out. The price increases by like 400%, and
Oh
so
my gosh.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So you were
actually
like, we're gone.
originally we were only going to move to Albania for the summer. And
Okay.
then we liked it and we're like, oh, let's just stay here.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny because we were just thinking about going to Greece for the summer. So and
Yeah.
it is expensive.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. Okay,
it
gotcha.
is.
All right. So you're moving around and before we hit record, you had said that probably you're going to be leaving Albania in a while and maybe South America or another European country, I think is what you said.
Yeah. So
Okay.
right now the decision is between either Thailand or Argentina, most likely, which are like two opposite, I mean, even opposite directions,
Yeah.
just so different. Yeah, but we're leaving Europe either way. So it's either South America or it's Asia.
So cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds amazing. Either one. So let's talk about your practice for a while. How are
Sure.
you making your private practice work? Maybe you can let everybody know like what state you're licensed in,
Yeah.
what the regulations are and just how you're managing that whole piece of it. Cause I know a lot of people just worry about how am I gonna do this, especially on European time zones. Like how do I manage all of
Yes.
that? And yeah. So how's
Mm-hmm.
that going for you?
Yeah, so that's probably my least favorite thing about this whole setup is the time zone. I have to be
Mm,
honest, it's not ideal. It's So when I was living in Greece, I was only seeing clients in Oregon, where I originally got licensed. And so it's Pacific time versus Greece is on Eastern European time. And so it's a 10-hour difference, which
Gosh.
was extreme. So,
Yes. Oh my gosh.
even, I mean, I'd have people, thankfully, I work with couples, and quite a lot of them, because of kids and work schedules and whatnot, they're very willing to meet pretty early in the morning, their
Mm,
time.
yeah.
So, but I was still starting work at about 5 p.m. Um,
Wow. Gosh.
yeah, yeah. And so
Mm,
that was not ideal.
yeah.
And then I was going until about, I would say 9 or 10 p.m. And
Yeah.
it was not the lifestyle I want.
Yeah. That's tough. So like every like weeknight, I guess, for you, you were 5 to 10
It
or 5 to 9.
was about 3 or 4 times a week.
Mm,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
that's tough because then it's like the whole evening's gone. Mm,
Yeah. And all day long, you're thinking, I have to be back in time to see my clients.
yes.
I have to make sure that I'm watching the clock, and I know, I need to get home. I need to get, if we're at the beach or if we're walking around town or whatever, like you have to go and you have to change and you have to
Mm,
look presentable, and then you got to set up your whole, so even though you would think, like, I have, between 8 or 9 in the morning when I wake up and 5 p.m. I have all day to myself. It's like you do, but you also don't.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I totally get that. It's like just hanging, kind of hanging there. It's like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, I got to go back and do
Yeah.
this thing for like 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Yep.
gosh. So is Albania better, or is it still a pretty big disparity, or how are you managing it now?
Yeah, so I did two things. First, we moved to Albania, which is Central European time. So it's an hour closer, which is
Okay.
helpful, but it's still 9 hours.
Mm.
And so I actually ended up getting licensed in an East Coast state.
Oh,
Yeah, so I got licensed in Massachusetts, and that was like one of the best decisions I think I've made,
mm.
because it shaved off between the move to Albania and the East Coast state, it shaved off 4 hours. So now
Wow.
I'm starting work at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon and then finishing at like 6, which is, I'll be honest, I would rather work from 9 to 1, but
Hmm.
it's still way more doable and I guess more lifestyle friendly than 5 to 10.
Yeah, that does sound better. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
So when you're thinking about Thailand or Argentina, are you taking that into account? Like
Oh yeah.
which one's gonna be better for me? Yeah. So which one would be better, like for traditional therapist hours?
So it's funny because you would think, like, or I thought, looking at Argentina, I'm like, oh, that's basically like Eastern time, right?
Well, yeah, I was
And
kind of thinking that, but maybe not.
it's not. It's actually 2 hours like later than Eastern time. So even with Pacific and,
Oh,
Pacific time, and if I'm in Buenos Aires, it's still 5 hours. I mean, that's
oh my
kind of
gosh.
a lot. Yeah, I know.
Oh Lord.
So, with Thailand, they don't observe daylight savings. So half the year it's a 14-hour difference, and half the year it's 15 hours. So what I've
Okay.
decided is I'm okay with either place, because if I'm in Argentina, I will focus on East Coast clients. And if I'm in
Hmm.
Thailand, I'll focus on my West Coast clients. And so that either
Oh,
one is fine.
smart.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to ask that. If you, since you're licensed in both, do you just stop seeing, certain people, or do you just kind of, are you just naturally wrapping up these sessions with the clients and making
Yes.
decisions like, okay, I know in 6 months I'm going to be here, so we need to wrap it up, or I need to refer you somewhere else? Like, I'm just curious how that process goes for you.
I think I've definitely, so I got licensed in Massachusetts a year ago, and since then I have definitely focused my marketing efforts in that particular state. And then I had, obviously all my clients before that were in Oregon. And so when people would graduate from therapy, I just wouldn't fill their spot with a West Coast client.
Oh,
I would
smart.
just say, like, or I would
Mhm.
give them the option. I would say, look, I live overseas. These are my hours. If it somehow works for your life to meet at 6 in the morning, let's do it.
Yeah.
But I recognize that it might not, and that's fine. And I can give you referrals or whatever.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do something sort of similar. I just tell my clients my schedule is going to be wild. I might see you at 11 in the morning, or I might see you at 7 p.m. your time. It just depends on where I am. And they're like, yeah, I mean, they're pretty flexible with it because they want to keep working with me. But
Yeah.
yeah. So that's good to know. It's such a consideration. People don't think about it, I don't think, really, before they just embark on,
I
we'll go to
I
so
definitely
and
didn't.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
at all. I thought like, oh, no problem.
Yeah. Now, the other thing you're doing, and something we talk about a lot on this podcast, is like multiple income streams, like other
Mhm.
areas where we might focus our efforts. And just for anybody listening, as therapists, we really are good in a lot of areas. We can read people, we could do sales, we could do
Yeah.
products. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can do. So I'd love if we could get into that a little bit and talk about, you see some clients, and we had talked before we hit record that they're private pay. So you've got that going. You don't have to worry
Hmm.
about insurances or anything like that. But then you've got a whole other business that you do. So I'd love to talk about that some too, and
Sure.
share with people, maybe get some tips and yeah, talk about it a little.
Sure. So I have a second business, and what I do is I help therapists and also alternative medicine providers, and then what I call holistic healers, because in Europe and in many other parts of the world, they may call themselves a therapist, but also they may not. Different, licensing requirements. There's no boards over here, for example, or there are, but there's, many fewer boards and regulations. So I just call it holistic healers, but this could be like in the UK, for example, counselors and therapists, they don't always call themselves that, or,
Mm.
Reiki masters, or people who maybe, and this is probably super controversial, but people who use EMDR in, kind of a coaching context. So, people who are kind of the healing practice, I work with them. And so what I help them do is market their businesses.
Mm.
So I do that in a combination of different ways. I don't use social media personally.
Okay.
So I don't teach that in my second business.
Mhm.
I've never gotten clients that way. I'm sure it works for people.
Yeah.
I didn't go that route.
Mhm.
So, I use a combination of like networking. So word of mouth is really big for me, my website, and then honestly, directory listings, which I think
Mhm.
surprises some people. But I get people from Psych Today, probably not. I used to be insurance based, and certainly when I was insurance based, I would get more referrals from Psych Today, but I still do get them.
Al is a comprehensive HIPAA compliance solution that helps you manage your practice, meet with your clients virtually through video therapy, manage client appointments and client records seamlessly, streamline your claims process, and communicate with clients securely through Al's client portal. Visit alpractice.com/Kim Tolson for an offer of 50% off your first 6 months.
And then I'm on a couple of like more specialized directories. So for example, like the Gottman Referral Network, since I work with couples and I'm Gottman
Yeah.
trained, I'm on that. And then
Mhm.
the discernment counseling directory, since I do
Oh,
discernment counseling. Yeah.
oh, what is discernment counseling? I'm not sure I'm familiar with that.
Yeah. So discernment counseling is a protocol for couples who are considering divorce. So rather
Oh.
than funneling them into therapy when they may not be ready for that or committed to it, really,
Mhm.
it's sort of it's a clarifying process of, where are we going from here? If we do couples therapy, what does that look like? What do I personally need to change in my behavior so that this marriage works? And am I willing to? And is that even possible? And then you make a decision, is couples therapy really appropriate, or is this marriage over?
Mhm. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, did you go from, you said you used to take insurance. Did you stop taking it when you moved abroad, or were you just over it anyway and just
Uh,
decided to be private pay?
Both. I was
Okay.
over it. I didn't have a clawback, but I had a
Mm.
situation where I had a client who I was seeing, and their insurance told me one thing. This was during quarantine.
Mm.
So it was kind of confusing, and like everything was sort of all over the place. And this
Yeah.
insurance company said, we're going to cover whatever it was, we're going to waive the copays, I think it was,
Oh, okay. Oh,
until
right.
this date. And then this date came and went. And so I called them and I said, are you still waiving the copays? And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. No problem.
Oh,
And,
Lord. Uh,
they weren't.
yeah.
And so at that point, I was like, I can't do it anymore. I'm done. And
Mhm.
then, I think even if I had not done that, I don't know how it works when you permanently live overseas. I don't know
Mm.
if that's like, in the insurance terms or whatever. So I just I didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah, it does get kind of sticky. I mean, you have to keep an address in the United States, like a business address, physical business address. But even then, some of them are really, Blue Cross Blue Shield specifically, are really starting to crack down on where the provider is located at the time of the session. So it's just, for some people, it's just easier to just do what you're doing. Yeah, that's why I was
Yeah.
curious why you made the decision. Because I get
Yeah.
that question all the time. It's like, okay, if I'm gonna like do this traveling therapist lifestyle, should I just be private pay or just do coaching or something like you're doing with the marketing business?
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand,
Interesting.
because I couldn't really, I mean, granted, this was almost 2 years ago, so I don't know if things have changed since then, but I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't
Yeah.
figure out like what's the clear cut answer, and does it depend on the insurance company? And
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
if, I mean, technically, like my quote unquote permanent address is at my parents' house and they live in the US. So is
Right.
that okay? I mean, I just don't know.
Yeah, I know it, and they don't make it easy to figure it out either.
No, they
It's
don't.
buried deep somewhere, and then you ask 20 people, and they all give you different answers. It's stressful,
Right.
because it's like,
Right.
gosh, I don't want all my money to get clawed back because I'm doing something wrong,
Mm-hmm.
or my clients, to not be able to see me suddenly because of an issue with the insurance. Yeah, it could be stressful for sure. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
So how do you manage your time with the clients and the marketing business? And, I'm guessing since, obviously we all know now pretty much if you're a coach, you can do it anywhere in the world. You're not bound by licensure restrictions. So it
Right.
sounds like you've got some clients in Europe. I'm guessing that makes it a little more on your time zone right now.
No, well, yes, some of
Oh,
my consulting or coaching clients have been here. Some of them have been in the US.
I
I
see.
do
Hmm.
make myself available to both places, so it just kind of depends.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's kind of an ongoing process,
Hmm.
trying to manage my time with all the time zone changes. I yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, it's kind of hard, actually. I'm
It
not gonna
is.
lie. Like that's the one
It
thing,
is.
whether or not I move to Argentina or I move to Thailand, I mean, that's honestly one of the things that I'm just looking forward to the most is I get to work in
Hmm.
the mornings.
Yeah, that's gonna be good.
But
It is
anyways,
hard. Yeah,
yeah, to answer your question, I charge high enough fees that I actually don't need to see very many people during the week for my therapy business.
that's great.
Um, yeah, so I see around 10 clients a week. And so I devote the rest of my working time to working on my private practice, website and whatnot, but also, getting my coaching and consulting business, you know, it's fairly new. It's within the last year. So I'm still,
Oh, nice.
getting all the systems in place and whatnot. So thankfully I don't see, I'm not seeing 30 clients a week or something like that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it sounds
Yeah.
like the perfect setup for what you're doing. And yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. That's great.
Yep.
So do you have any marketing tips?
Oh yeah.
Because you talked about the directory listings. I do some coaching myself, and that's one of the first things we'll do is look at the copy on the website and on the
Yes.
directory and be like, this is not good. We need to change this. So I just wondered, do you have any tips for people that they could put into action to help them with their marketing?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So the thing that I tell therapists right off the bat, and I think people have kind of a mixed reaction to this, but I always tell people to get pretty clear on who they want to see and who they want to work with.
Mhm.
So this is sort of like marketing 101, and I'm sure people have heard this a million and one times, but really having not just a specialty, so like, for example, for me, I'll use myself as an example. So I'm a couples therapist.
Mhm.
That's my specialty. My niche is couples on the brink of divorce. So that's who I'm working with and that's
Gotcha.
who I'm seeing. Um, Granted, I get inquiries from couples who are not in that place, whether they find
Mhm.
me, because of the Gottman referral network or it's a word of mouth referral or something like that, they're not considering divorce, but they still need therapy. They will still reach out to me, and that happens pretty frequently, but I'm niching down, and then I'm positioning myself as, if you are considering divorce, I'm the person to hire. And
Mm.
so it makes the process of quote unquote selling therapy to clients so much easier. Like it's
Mhm.
so much easier to say, this is what we're going to do. This is the whole protocol. This is why we're doing it this way. And they're like, yep, sign me up.
Mm. Nice.
Yeah. And I charge a
Yeah.
premium fee and they're like, yep, that's great. Let's do it.
Hmm.
So really
In and
getting
out.
pretty, yeah, and getting
Hmm.
pretty specific. I think more specific that therapists think they're getting specific, and I don't think they're as specific as they think they are.
Yeah, it's such a good point. I just actually saw a social media post yesterday, I think, and it was like, what's the difference in a specialty and a niche? And, a lot
Exactly.
of people think their specialty is their niche, but it's not. You can go
Yes.
deeper and be more specific, especially if you're private pay like you are, and
Yeah.
you really want to attract that particular client.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so helpful for people. So really getting into that, but then selling that to your ideal customer, I guess, your ideal
Mm-hmm.
client to really
Yeah.
specifically, like you said, this is how we're going to do it. This is what we're going to do. And this is probably the outcome you're going to have. Yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yep. And then
Yeah.
making, I tell therapists all the time, like, make your website about your clients, not about you. It's not about you.
Yes. That's such a good one. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess everybody at this point is probably seeing the Psychology Today audits that coaches will do. They're like,
Yep.
this is terrible, and here's why. Here's all the reasons. But like you said, the important thing is like how I'm going to help you, not like why I'm so wonderful, like that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not your resume. It's not your
Right.
resume.
I love that. Yeah. So when like a therapist or a coach comes to work with you, what's your process like? Do you just like help them with copy and niche down and get all that stuff figured out?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it kind of
Okay.
depends on, it kind of depends on what the therapist needs and what their field is. If they're a mental health
Mhm.
therapist in the US, then it there's some extra considerations like are they leaving insurance, and do they need to raise their rates, et cetera, et cetera. Here in Europe, because the insurance process is different. Actually, I think people believe that insurance covers mental health therapy here, and oftentimes it doesn't.
It's interesting.
So, yeah.
Hmm.
So a lot of people over in Europe are already private pay kind of by default. And so, like I said, it's just sort of a different process. But
Hmm.
for everybody, my number one thing, like I said, is let's get really clear on who you're trying to attract, because that's going to inform like everything else. It's going to inform
Right.
where you get visible and what you write, and how you set up your practice, etc. So niching is so important, and then really doing some work around the copy and making sure that you're, like you said, you're writing to your client. You're not writing about yourself.
Mhm.
It's not your CV or your resume. And
Yeah.
then getting visible. So
Yeah.
whether that, like I said, I don't teach social media marketing in my with my consulting clients, because I don't do that in my private practice. So
Yeah.
I'm not the person
Hmm.
to ask about it. But that's one example of getting visible. The way that I teach is networking, because I
Hmm.
I think that has really worked out very well for me. I mean, I've gotten referrals from therapists that I knew 5 to 10 years ago, when I was living
Yeah.
in the US, and I
Hmm.
didn't think that they remembered me. And then they sent
Hmm.
me clients, for example.
Yeah.
So yeah, making sure that you partner with, other therapists or other professionals in some way. So it's really about getting really focused, working on your messaging, and then getting visible.
Yeah, I love that. And I totally agree with you. I don't really see a lot of clients now, but when I did, that was definitely how I got clients, word of mouth and just, networking connections I had made over the years with other therapists and doctors and that sort of thing that knew
Hmm.
about me. Yep.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
helpful. And I really loved what you said in your bio. Of course, it'll be in the show notes, but your bio was like, I teach you how to not do bro marketing, which
Yeah. None of
for
that
anybody
nonsense.
listening, that's like the creepy DMs you get in your on your Facebook. Like every day I
I
get like
hate
20 of
those.
these things. It's like, hey, they just start out with like, wow, you have a great website or something like that. And then it's just like so I hate to say douche chills or whatever, but it's just so creepy and gross. It's like, this is not how you do this. I can't even believe people get, customers that way, but they must sometimes because they keep doing it. But I
Hmm.
like, I
Yep.
like how you said that. That was a really good point. I was like, yes.
Yeah, no slime over here. No slime,
Yeah.
no weird strategies, nothing gross.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. So if somebody
Yeah.
wants to work with you, how would they get in touch with you if they want to work on marketing or just even learn
Sure.
about how you're doing this traveling therapist private pay stuff.
Sure. So the best way is probably to sign up for my email list. And so they can do that. They can go to allysonclemmons.com and then they'll get some emails from me. And then they can reply to those if they want to talk directly. They can also find me on Instagram, and my handle is at Allyson Markets.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, either way.
Okay. Yeah. And I'll put that in the show notes too for anybody that's listening and wants to get a hold of Allyson. Well, thank you so much. I'd love to
You're
hear
welcome.
about, the future, if you ever want to come back, how Argentina or Thailand goes.
Thank you. I'll let you
Yeah,
know. I appreciate you
yeah.
having me.
You're welcome. Thanks. Thank you so much for listening to the Traveling Therapist podcast. For show notes, links, and downloads, head over to thetravelingtherapist.com, where you'll be able to learn more about my journey, the courses I've created for you, and other exciting resources to make your dreams become a reality. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with your traveling therapist friends, subscribe to the podcast, and if you love this episode, please leave a review.